This conference will now be recorded.
And everyone in attendance will receive 1 CFRE credit. Finally, we are going to mute all the phone lines. Because this is a webinar, we ask that you don't place this on hold, and instead, let me take that a step back here. We're just going to mute all the phone lines just to prevent any kind of feedback that we might receive. And we will open up at the end for any questions or questions that you might have so that we can go ahead and answer that. You can also use the chat box if there's a question that comes up during the webinar. We will be monitoring that and be able to address any issues you might have. All right, so with that, I'd like to present Brandon and Kara to go ahead and present the webinar to you.
Thanks so much.
We're excited to join today. We've done this webinar a couple times here, and we're really excited about this content for many reasons. As we know, corporate giving is a topic that is on everyone's minds, and we want to share some of the things that we're seeing through customers as well as through some of the different entities and experience that we have. Kara and I have very different backgrounds. Kara came from the nonprofit side, and I came from the sports industry. So we're going to bring two different perspectives here and go through the slides. Can I have the control to change the slide here, or can we just?
Brandon, you should be able to go ahead and change the slide.
I'm not. It's not changing for me when I click. But it looks like it changed now. Okay, so our agenda for this, we want to first start off with identifying new sponsors, corporate donors. Obviously, you see the survey on the right here. That is what is on most people's minds. We want to touch on that. We're going to talk a little bit about the ask, some ideas for new sponsorships, and then dive into following up and retention of corporate sponsors a little bit. So we'll continue on here.
If you take a look really quickly here, though, we do have a poll that, oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Can we go back to the previous slide, please?
Are you able to?
No, we're not able to change it. Can you make me the presenter so I can do that? It's not working with.
All right, I'll change that for you. You're a presenter, so go ahead and there you go.
Sorry about that. Here we go. So identifying new potential sponsors. Let's dive in here. We're going to talk a little bit about research and then events versus annual sponsors. There's a lot of resources out there. We listed these out, but just to touch on some of the things that really are newer. Obviously, you can Google anything you want, but looking at LinkedIn and Facebook, utilizing local newspapers is obviously something you want to continue to do, but the business journals in your area as well. New business openings, look for who's really trying to make a splash in the area, who's running ads, who's spending the money to get their product in front of others. Some recent local and similar event pages, see who's sponsoring them as well, and even look at who's running Google Ads in your area. And we're going to touch on that a little bit further on how to utilize that data. Some digital ads on Yellow Pages are always useful as well. And then just, where do people shop? Interview your donors, interview your board. Where are they shopping? Where are they spending their money currently?
Yeah, and those are all great things too, Brandon. One thing that I did want to point out that we've kind of underlined here too is that we've kind of done the work for you. So GiveSmart's invested and kind of in time and energy, and has already kind of created what we call a corporate donation guide that I know that Brandon's going to put in the chat later. So we've actually done some research to find out who's giving, what they're giving to, what kind of causes they're giving. Are they giving to grants versus in-kind donations? So it's a really awesome tool that I think will be super helpful for you guys as you start, engaging those corporate donors.
Yes, for sure. That's a great resource, and I did put it into the chat here. Feel free to jump in there and explore, and we have some regional ones as well. We're very big on creating this environment of referrals, empowering your community to bring in new sponsors, not just your board, your volunteers, the different constituents in your network. And we sat down and chatted with a friend of mine, Megan, who's with LLS Chicago here, and just talked about what her tips would be to empower your community. One of those tips is providing recruiting packets. So arm your community with information, all the necessary information. So when someone's ready to sponsor or is interested in sponsoring, they have the necessary information so they can share that along. The other piece is utilize social media, not just ask them to post things on social media or do their own, but guide them. Go onto their LinkedIn, for instance, and look at who could be a potential prospect for you, someone that you've tried to work with, and ask them, how well do you know this person? Would they be interested in sponsoring? Because often that'll trigger something they had never thought of.
Yeah, Megan also mentioned too is providing a list of specific needs for in-kind sponsors as well. So that can be twofold. One, two is is your organization in need of computers or IT equipment? Targeting those type of corporate donors because they're always looking to donate their product and things like that to your organization. The other piece to that would also be looking for sponsors for in-kind donations regarding, event-related needs. So is that the flowers, the tablecloth at your event, a liquor donor, all of those options, and making it so you have, the most promising options for those donors. Also creating, networking events as well. So I know we've all probably been to those networking events, but you as an organization creating that to where your other corporate donations can come in, learn about your mission, get a sense of who you are, and kind of have a twist and make it a little bit fun too. So, having those quick little happy hours or anything like that to be able to invite your community to is always a great idea as well.
And I'm a research nut, a data nut, and Karen knows it's just on what I do currently. And I wanted to share some of the research tricks, some of the things that are a little bit newer that we're doing, and different ways that you can utilize just research to identify new potential sponsors. So any of these are kind of newer to you, and we can explain them further. But local advertisers. So if someone's spending money, even if it's a billboard or if it's something smaller, say they're running an ad in the local newspaper, they're interested in attracting new customers. They're spending money to do that. They're going to be someone who is potentially more likely to spend money with you if there's opportunities to expand their network. When we're house searching, I was just house hunting recently, and you want to look for comps in the area. You want to find something that's comparable. So look for an event that's similar to yours, either in your local area, so in the Chicago area, or even in your industry or behind the cause. So if you are focused on breast cancer awareness and you are trying to identify someone who would be a good sponsor, look at maybe a breast cancer awareness organization in the LA area and see who they're getting for sponsors. They're a comparable event size or comparable area. And if they have a lot of sponsors that are car dealerships, that's a new trigger for you to say, hey, they're doing it over there. Why don't we do it here? It's a good way to bring that around. Social media, who's talking about the different topics? Who is following you? Use that network. If someone else is retweeting you all the time, find out what they do, find out who they're involved with. And then this is one that I kind of find fun, and this is something that maybe is newer to folks, is matching needs with in-kind partners. So Google search is great. You can type in something, search for it, and find what you need, but use the Google information for what you're trying to accomplish. So flowers in Tucson is what I searched here on the right, and you can see I have three little ad marks on these top three results. Those are the first three people I'd call because they're spending money to rank in that position. They want you to know that they're in the area to be a florist for you. So that might be an option for an in-kind need that you are trying to fulfill. So any of those needs, DJs, all those different things, see who's spending the money on Google because they're spending per click, which means every time someone clicks on their link, they're spending money. You might as well try and take advantage of that a little bit and reach out to them first. So how do we reach out to those folks? We got a few obvious ones here. So email, snail mail, phone calls, your board and volunteers. Nothing surprising there, but do them all. We recommend not just one thing. And then some of the newer things that we're seeing. So on the social media side, more and more we're seeing people using the messaging to engage. I get LinkedIn messages quite a bit now from organizations and people trying to connect, build their networks. But utilize those to try and engage people where they are.
Yeah. Also, we kind of touched on this earlier too, and I know a lot of you probably on the phone, host live events as well, usually fundraising events, right? But consider doing that in a smaller size too. So, hosting those networking events for community, inviting the community members, working with the Chamber of Commerce. So that's a great tool that is at your disposal that already has a lot of great partners associated with it. So, reaching out to your local Chamber of Commerce to see if you might be able to get involved with their networking events, or being able to kind of come in and speak at one of those events to try to get people more engaged in your mission.
For sure. Before we jump forward, are there any questions on the different opportunities there? If not, I'll keep going. Cool. So we have what we call here our 3 keys to the ask. So as we're sitting here, one of the most obvious things you would think is to actually make the ask. But the reason I make this the first point of make the ask, it's silly, right? But you have to identify value for the sponsors. Actually ask them, what would be beneficial for them, and actually identify in advance, these are different ways that we can work together. Create an actual presentation, and we're going to touch on how to do that a little bit.
So the first thing that we want to kind of talk about is, again, being specific with, options instead of being more general, right? So thinking of if it's a sponsor that is IT based and you could use computers for a classroom, being specific in the ask, usually generally, and just saying, instead of saying I'd like $10,000 for computers, can usually make a difference in the sponsors that you're working with. So again, making sure that you're being specific, really think about that, and also get into some creative ways of how you can do that as well. So we talked about putting a package together, things like that. Well, don't just put a general package with your 5 different levels of sponsorship or whatever it would be. Think a little bit outside the box there. So, and by doing so, allowing the sponsor to customize based on their needs and interests, right? So, asking the sponsor or the corporate donor, what would be important to them? What do they want to see? What would engage them in order to be a part of your organization? That's kind of the trend that we're seeing, is that giving has gone up for sure, and especially corporate giving, but they want to feel engaged with the community, organizations that they're a part of. So again, really making sure that you're honing in on exactly what those needs are for the sponsor, not so much, in conjunction with your own needs.
Definitely. And then one more thing to the ask, and I see a question in there from Maya, and I'll try and answer that for you. But we highly emphasize, don't just send a letter. Sponsors get stacks and stacks of letters from people wanting to get a donation or a sponsorship, or even just a silent auction item. I worked in the sports industry for 10 years, and we used to get letters weekly, daily from organizations, and they want to support everyone. They want to be able to help, but there's only so much they can do. So they do signing parties with all their players. So in the NFL, it's all the football players will sign a bunch of different items at the beginning of the year, and once they run out of things to donate, that's all they can do. So being a little bit creative with your approach, again, the thing I feel like we say over and over again is thinking outside the box, but connect with the potential partner, maybe identify an ambassador with the organization that can be your introduction to that organization, rather than just sending a letter and hoping that they will send you something. And you might get something, but it might be the 3rd string quarterback autographed football that really isn't going to do much for you in your silent auction, or even, maybe the donation is just a pair of tickets in the roof of the building.
And Brandon, just to because you do have that sports background, just thinking about that, how are ways that you can get through the noise then, right? So of course, not always sending a letter, but what are some of the ways, since you have that background, that I'm sure all of the attendees on this would love to know what would make them special. What are some areas that would be able to help them in that regard?
So some differentiation that I've seen, and I worked in different markets, but in similar markets to Chicago, and what things really stood out is creating volunteer opportunities for the employees, creating a connection with the employees, using social media, find out who is on their corporate side that is involved in maybe some of the causes that are correlative to what you do, or identifying a real ambassador with the organization. I've seen recently some events where they had an ambassador from the Chicago Bears, and he did a great live auction item donation, and it did more than any of their other items, and it was really a great exclusive package. But it worked because it was exclusive, and it came from someone that was inside the organization. And sometimes you need to build that relationship, and that's not just in the sports industry, that's really anywhere. If you have that relationship and you have that ambassador, that's going to help you. And obviously there might not be someone for everyone there, so the other piece of it is create a message that will really resonate with anyone. So a video message, even video outreach, send them something by email, but put a video in there, put something that is really going to make your organization stand out. Like I said, they're getting letters all the time. If you can tell your story and it's not just another thing for them to read or digest, you'll be able to stand out more and utilize that research to further get in there with those organizations. Maya's question here about the Chamber of Commerce. I know from my experience here in Chicago, sometimes you have to just start attending their events and network a little bit and get to know them. The Chamber of Commerce is here to improve the community. They're a fantastic organization. We work with the Chamber of Commerce and the Better Business Bureau, and they run some great events in the area. And that's where a lot of the business networkers are going to be. Maybe not the decision makers at the organization for sponsorships, but when it comes to small business, they often are. So creating that relationship on site will at least open the door a little bit. The Chamber of Commerce probably gets solicited quite a bit to just get a list of names to send out information. You want to differentiate yourself and be a part of the community a little bit before you ask for that. I hope that answered the question. So new sponsorship opportunities, how do we differentiate? And I'm going to kick this to Kara because she's done way more of these than I have.
Yeah. So again, kind of you're seeing probably a theme here, right? So customizing your ask, making yourself different, getting through the noise. So again, I'm not going to go through all of these because many of you probably already do these. But I would say, thinking these through, again, this gives some examples of ways to kind of customize the ask and thinking a little bit outside the box. So if you're hosting a golf tournament, don't just host a golf tournament and ask them to buy a foursome, right? So, have that hole sponsor or a contest sponsor, right? So somebody that would be maybe it's Tito's Vodka, and they'll give a package or something like that around that, that contest or something like that, and or a cocktail sponsor. So doing a fun cocktail at the event and promoting that drink that way. Also, kind of going into this, and Brandon touched on this, and I'm really, really a big advocate of this because I've seen it work many, many times, is the volunteer opportunities available for corporate donors. So the trend for, corporate donations and things like that, a lot of it is turning to the employee engagement. So if the employees are engaged in an organization, they are much more likely to support it financially. So creating opportunities, inviting local community or corporate leaders and employees to have a volunteer day so that they can be involved in your organization. A lot of corporations are now, and I know we do this at GiveSmart as well, is allowing employees to have those volunteer days and really encouraging them to give back. So looking through different ways that you can engage those employees from the ground level will create those ambassadors that kind of Brandon had spoken about earlier, as well as kind of give you an into those organizations.
And one of the things that's becoming a lot more common to kind of jump on that thought is offering a community event or a contest or like a softball tournament or getting involved in some kind of activity. Companies want to differentiate themselves for their employees. Employee retention is really their biggest focus. There's a lot of people in the workforce looking to jump around more often. So creating an opportunity for someone to support your organization and still have fun always a great way to differentiate your organization. I'm going to talk a little bit about incorporating sponsors into your event via technology. This is obviously something that's been more and more popular over the past few years. We do a lot of these things with our partners, with our organizations, and we always encourage some of these best practices. And the number one thing we're encouraging more than anything is video. Give your sponsors the chance to tell their story, tell their, why, their reason for supporting you with the most popular media of consumption. And we know that that is video, whether it's Instagram or all the other different social media and cool things that the kids are using. People are using video to communicate the message more and more, and being able to incorporate your sponsor, even if you can get the sponsor to donate an item and that's it, have them add a video or talk about the experience, because that is going to convey a message of support for your organization, but also a message of partnership, and you want that to be a piece of this. You don't want that to really hinder the renewal of that. You want it to enhance it. So that's the first piece. And then looking at a direct link landing page. So this is a technical way to really incorporate an event or an experience with your sponsors. So Kara brought up Tito's already. We're using Tito's in the example here, but
we like Tito's around here.
We're a big fan of Tito's and how they do some of their stuff. But Tito's sponsored one of our charity partners, and they had a party, a post-event party that they promoted through their advertisement on the software. They were able to promote that. So the link here to join the party, they click on that. They had a special link that they could track how many people clicked on it, how many registered, all the data that they want. And it was a great way to promote Tito's, but also the partnership of working together. So that direct link allows them to not only see how it's performing on their end, but also get some new potential leads, potential contacts, potential, whatever they're looking for. It really could be any kind of experience that they want to put up there. That's an opportunity to use technology and incorporate data for what the sponsors are looking for as a result. And then the last item here is a more experiential partnership, a more ingrained way to work together. So anyone who sponsors your event, there's an opportunity to have more of an experiential opportunity, often through the silent auction or live auction, where they auction off basically their services or an experience of their services. So the product is the prize, and the description is basically a free advertisement, but also a way for them to tell exactly what they do. And even something you can see here as sexy as a trust and estate planning option with a silent auction item that sold at the event for above price of what they normally would get for that. But it also was unique. It stood out because not everyone has an estate planning silent auction item. This partnership worked really well for that organization because they also got a sponsorship out of them. So incorporating not just a cash sponsorship, but incorporating that into your silent auction, and use those descriptions to convey the message of what they do. And don't be afraid to say this is a sponsored item, generously donated by so-and-so. That is a great way to really show they're a supporter of ours, and we're really proud of that. Looks like there is, not a question. Okay. So sponsor environments. We've talked about this a little bit. We've emphasized being creative and flexible. Let's talk about this a little bit further here.
Absolutely. So Brandon already kind of touched on that of, making things unique, right? So again, all of you probably do some sort of fundraising event of some sort. For the most part, the majority of you do. So, one of the things thinking about, instead of just putting up a sign that says thank you to our sponsors or a PowerPoint or something like that, really have an interaction with the sponsor. So something that would be memorable at that event or that networking or cocktail party, whatever it would be, really engaging, that piece of it and making sure the sponsor would obviously be okay with that. But again, sponsoring, I think this was a bouncy house. So having the sponsor be a part of that bouncy house interaction is a memorable experience, and people usually will remember it that way.
Right.
Thinking of ways of, if you're going to have a game or a raffle or something like that, that would be really intriguing to, surrounding by, the sponsor at hand. So again, thinking of ways to interact with sponsorships to make it memorable instead of just putting up a sign or a PowerPoint.
For sure. And if you're going to do a bouncy house or something like that, maybe don't have that sponsored by Tito's.
Or do.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that could be fun.
That might be a good time either way. But one thing that's a great example of incorporating a new way of thinking outside the box, Allstate Insurance sponsored college football, and they specifically sponsored the Nets and put their logo in the net to promote their support of scholarship funds. So every time the ball hit the net, they donated money, and they've been doing this since 2005. I think the number's now over almost $4 million that they've donated for scholarship funds through this program. But how this came about was a sponsorship where they needed to think outside the box. They needed to come up with something that was not just in the realm of putting another patch on a team's uniform. They wanted to really incorporate their goodwill and also put their logo out there.
Yeah. And again, kind of going back to that theme of customization, right? So making sure that you're customizing the packages that are offered, again, and really thinking and not being afraid. I think that sometimes as nonprofits that we're afraid to ask for more from a donor, or maybe we already have a corporate donor and they've been really, wonderful, and they've given the same thing year after year. I would definitely encourage you guys to have those conversations of, what would it take to, we're kind of trying to think outside the box. If you're happy doing what you have been doing, great. But, we're really looking for ways to really customize our relationship and take that kind of to the next level. So, whether that be, would they consider, again, making things more fun, mixing their annual giving with the event and both, or, what are those packages look like to make you really feel engaged with our organization? Whether that's hosting, the volunteer event, or whether that's, being a part of now the Young Professionals Board, or whatever that would be, engaging those donors and really asking them. And I will tell you, they will appreciate it a lot. And some may say, I'm fine with what we've been giving, or we can't give more. But, maybe thinking of ways that you can expand what they're already giving in a way that makes you feel, I guess, them feel good, and also, make sure that you're getting your needs met.
I think we've got a slide here for questions. So we'll open it up for questions. We wanted to make sure we got through all the content here, but more than happy to go back to anything and talk further about it and dive in further on any of the subjects.
Brandon, one thing I'll point out is that if anyone does have a question, I'm happy to open up the microphone so that they can speak to you. It might be a lot to type.
For sure. And we have, since we've done this before, we do have a Q&A that we did. There's a question. I'll answer that one here. And what if your donors are older and don't use LinkedIn social media? Even if they are not on social media currently, we're seeing more and more that most business professionals are using LinkedIn at a minimum. They might not be using it very well, but really the key way to really engage their network is to sit down and spend some time asking them, where do you shop? Who do you work with on a daily basis? What clients potentially would be interested in expanding their business? And ask the questions with guiding principles. So think of the Google search that I was talking about earlier. Look for the things that would help you the most. If you know that lawyers are big supporters in a different market for your type of organization, find out who your donors and your board members know in the legal world. Do the research so you're armed with the information. But we do see, social media is this monster these days, that it's still worth doing the research. And if they don't have LinkedIn, then the live conversation will be very helpful, because just picking their brain will maybe click on, oh, you know what, I know Bob and his firm sponsors this other event. You should reach out to them.
And I think also too, Jillian, just to go back to that too, I think you asked, other good ways to engage their networks, which Brandon already had mentioned, also, thinking about what your needs are and then seeing which donors are best fits for those needs. And you may not know that, right? But if you guys are really looking for something very specific to fund, or, again, going back to that customization, sitting down with those donors and saying, this is what we're trying to do, from your network standpoint, who can help with that? So I think, I think sometimes, never being afraid to ask, or you're feeling like you're asking too much, they're already engaged with you, right? So they're already, for the most part, if they've already donated to you, or they're already feeling kind of engaged at some point, you really want to capture that and really want to make them feel like that what they can do can really help your organization.
And as I mentioned, we do have what we kind of would call the common questions from our recent presentations. I can send that for distribution through the AFP, and it's on our blog, one of the most recently posted pieces, because there are so many common questions around this topic, and maybe you don't want to share a question, but it's on your mind. Feel free to visit that and check it out. It's a free resource. There's no form on that or anything, but Kara and I spent some time going through the many questions we got last time. If there's not any other questions, we certainly don't want to take up anyone's time if we need to get lunch or get back to it. Certainly appreciate the time, and feel free to reach out to us with further questions.
And please take the time to look at that corporate donation guide. I think that that's going to be a huge help, and it does kind of hone in. And again, like we said, we've kind of done the work for you with those organizations that already donate pretty frequently. So we really would encourage you guys to take a look at that as well.
And I am putting a link to this presentation in the chat.
I think Lisa's asking how she gets the recording.
Yeah, and I can pick up from there if there are no other questions. First of all, I just want to thank Brandon and Kara for your presentation today. And when we send all the participants the survey that will follow this afternoon, we will include the link of today's recording so that you can access that at a later time or for whatever reference you might need. Thank you both for this. And just a couple reminders about a few AFP events. AFP Chicago is launching the LGBTQ Affinity Group. It's going to meet on Thursday, September 12th at Sidetrack. And we also have Development Day that's coming up Friday, September 20th at the Radisson Blu Aqua Hotel. Prior to that, there's going to be a networking event. It's the third Thursday, so it's going to be September 19th at the Adler Planetarium that will help kick off our Development Day. You can always see this information on our website at www.afpchicago.org. So there's one other question here from Lisa, and I think that you both mentioned, Brandon and Kara, that you do have a list of common questions that have been asked about this. If you want to email it to me, I can make sure that all the participants do receive it with their.
Yeah. I'll send all three of the links I put in the chat to you so you can share those along. But I did put the link to the blog about the questions just in there right now.
All right, sounds great. So I appreciate that. Thank you both, and for everyone else, have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.